Hey, what's up, guys? Today I have my uncle's bird. I built this for him a long time ago, and he started having issues with it. This was before the final iteration of the magnetic auger. So we're going to get in there and find out what happened to it. He also told me he's got a lot of these Black & Decker batteries. And at first I didn't think that I could go through and change my model to accept it. And then I remembered that I did it in two pieces. This is actually two models, and I stuck them together in Mesh Mixer before I printed them. So I did that part totally independent. So what I'm planning on doing is redesigning this part for his Black & Decker battery and sending it on its way. Now this one is one of the rare concern Kalashnikovs. He must have bought this one from me way back in the day. So yeah, let's get in that hopper and find out what went wrong. Yeah, this was so long ago. For a while there, after Drozder left us, he had a solution where he had like a little metal clip, called it a magazine clip, that clipped around here and kept that from expanding with the high air pressure and stronger motor to avoid what we called mushroom mag, where that just splits open with BBs and jams up. So yeah, he's got some zip ties on here, and that was what we did for a little while. Now these are really loose, so that could be an indication of what was wrong with it, because it could be loose enough to where that was just expanding just enough to cause problems. But don't think that was what it was, but we're gonna get in there and find out. And it's wild to see how much it's changed, but just looking at it, I can't see what would be causing it any issues. It very well could have been those loose zip ties on there, but the auger looks healthy. Now, it could have been the BBs. I'm not sure. This was probably before the Daisy BBs went bad. It kind of looks like it, but I'm going to get these BBs out and look at them under some magnification to see if that could have been it. So I was looking at everything, and I noticed, I said, this is the wrong motor. The correct motor should look like this in the back. But I said, well, you know, that's the wrong motor unless it's got a 2K board in it, and this is so old, it's got a 2K board in it. So what could it have possibly been? It could have been too tight of a clutch. And it could have been, you know, that pulsating probably in there. It's probably what it was, or a combination of both of them. And then, of course, we've got our older auger design, but it looks fine. And there's not too much abnormal wear in there that would cause problems. So yeah, it's a mystery. I'm not going to shoot it because it's getting all upgraded. So I just figured that, you know, it'd be kind of interesting if I could spot it right off the bat, but it's just so old. Yeah, it's just not even what I deal with these days, because I've just come so far past that. So here we are, day 2 of upgrading this bird, and I figured out why it was not shooting. When I took the top part of it apart to get the barrel off and check everything out up there, there's a BB right there. So yeah, that's not going to work. But this barrel was loose, and I got it off, And that's what I found. And because it was loose, the valve body did not have proper alignment with the barrel, and it wrecked the seal. I mean, wrecked the breech. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of mushroomed. I'm not sure where we left off. I accidentally hit a button, but the breech is mushroomed slightly. Let's see. There you go. From misalignment. So that goes to show you just how important alignment is. And this barrel is trashed. Okay, here we are several days later, and I'm basically done with this one. I still need to tune it up and get it sent back, but the build is pretty much finished. And that battery is a Black & Decker 20-volt battery, an amp and a half. I weighed it with next to against the Craftsman 2 amp battery, and they weigh virtually the same thing. You get a little slightly different color scheme, I guess. They're both red and black. There's more red and less black on the Craftsman battery. And so yeah, for those of you who are just curious if I can make the mod for different batteries, I can if you want to pay for it. But this was a special deal for my uncle, so if by chance you wanted me to do this, I've already got the file and you can see that I can do it. Anyway, I'm going to show him about the new board because I think I mentioned it earlier in this video, but it had a 2K board in it, so he doesn't know about any of the SPS stuff or any of that. So I'm going to try to do this without knocking it over. Phew, I just didn't push it down hard enough. Anyway, let's see what we got here. Of course, you're not going to be able to see the display too well because it's flashing. And of course, you know, in real life, it's not flashing. But this first button over here is your fire rate selector. Those 3 dashes indicate full auto. And that 0 is just your counter, your shot counter. But as we cycle through it, you have your 1 to 10 round burst, just like with the 2K board, and then full auto. And then here is your rate of fire selector. And we're on 5K right now, but it starts at 410, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,400. It's hard for me to see out here in the dark, but it does have a brightness display control. 2K 2500, 3K 3500, 4K 4500, and then 5,000 rounds a minute is what that is. Let me try to get us in the shade a little bit better. And here's our pulse width duration button. And we're on a pulse of 4 right now. And I think, let's see what this, it goes in half milliseconds all the way up to 12 and starts at 3 milliseconds. So when you get up into like anything over 7 milliseconds is just going to be wasting air. It'll get louder, but you won't have any more velocity gain. You can probably put 7 milliseconds in 2,000 rounds a minute. Above that, like at 2500, you might have to dial it back to maybe a pulse of 6.5. You just shoot it on full auto, and if it shoots rough, bring it back one. If it still shoots rough, keep bringing it back until it smooths out. So then as you go higher in fire rate, you'll have to drop it back further. And usually at 5K, you're down around 4 or 5. Each gun's a little bit different. It just depends on how much pressure you've got in there and a few other factors. But in general, you're going to be, the most you can have it on is 5 at 5K, usually less. I was just in there editing the video and realized there were several things I didn't touch on. One of them is the SPS function. Now, with the old 2K, you could cycle through and choose what pulse rate you wanted, and then, like if you were on 1,000 rounds a minute and you switched to 2,000 rounds a minute, your pulse rate wouldn't change as you changed your fire rate. You would actually have to physically, manually change your pulse rate every time you switch to a different fire rate if you wanted a different pulse rate. What the SPS does is, since we've got so many fire rates, you don't want to carry around a notebook with you to remember what pulse is best for what fire rate at what PSI, blah 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 blah. What you do is you choose, you shoot it, and then like I was telling you earlier, once you've gotten it to the right pulse rate for whatever fire rate, just leave it and then go, say, up to the next fire rate and do the same thing. Identify what pulse rate is best for that fire rate and leave it on that, and then switch to another fire rate, and it will remember the last pulse rate, that pulse width duration for any given fire rate, as long as you just leave off, and then you can go in and manually change it later if you want to, like if you changed barrel, if you changed what pressure you were shooting, or whatever. Brightness, I guess I'm going to have to get the board for this, the gun actually. But battery capacity, that's something that I wanted to touch on with these battery packs. Now, normally, well, for the past, 7 years we've been using 14500, so these battery packs are relatively new on the scene. But the 14500s we were using, they're 700 milliamp hours. So that, I calculated a long time ago, that would get you at least 5 magnums. There's 1,000 BBs in a full hopper, and it would get you at least 5 magnums if you wanted to do that at 4K. What people don't think about when we start talking about these numbers is, that they hear about these BB guns, and one of the first things that you do is you go out and you just buy a bunch of BBs. Well, you got to think that there is so much air that goes into 5,000 rounds that you're going to run out of air way before you run out of anything else. So even with that Black & Decker battery that's 1.5 amps, that's like more than twice as much the capacity as the 14500s. And then with the 14500s, you've got all these connections between each one of them where you've got loss because they're not solid connections. Whereas with these battery packs, you've got good solid lugs of copper on copper. So yeah, and you know, just with the 2 amp packs, the 2 amp Craftsman packs, that's just even more capacity. It's excessive, really. So let me show you how to work the brightness. Okay, I'm going to try to do this with one hand. What you do is you hold down the farthest leftmost button, and you press the one next to it, and that gives us our different brightness levels. And some of you with 5Ks might have that, and some of you don't. And if you do have it, you might not even know it. Alright guys, later.